Oh, yeah, I'm good to go.
All right. Recording in 3, 2.
Recording.
All right. We need to do some echo management. Unless that's like a demonstration of the replicatability of collective intelligence. But anyway, welcome everyone to the Start Is Now podcast, episode number 2, with Mike as our host. Mike, take it away. And we still have some weird audio stuff going on. Mike, you're muted, and anyway, we'll sort it out, I'm sure.
I'm hearing things like a couple seconds late.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. Are you hearing me in real time right now? Okay. And then there's some weird kind of audio going on, and okay, yeah, let's everybody mute and see if it goes away. Okay, now I'm the only
I recommend headphones as a best practice.
Yeah, that's seldom the issue. It's something more weird, but it seems like we're okay, at least as long as Marco is muted. But anyway, I think we're good to go. Mike, please take it away.
Yeah, again, there's still a little discrepancy in our connection, Jamin, but we were talking what the fuck CSI as a as just put it James's way, as a new kind of dimension to the conversations we've been having over the past week.
Yeah, so we might as well start there. And we had a great Twitter Spaces yesterday for a couple hours, and we were delving into it. And where I'm netting out at the moment is, what is CSI? I'm kind of envisioning sort of 3 facets to the definition.
Yeah, Jamin.
Yeah.
Is Jamin's connection laggy for everyone else, or is it just me?
No, it's definitely laggy.
He's been cutting out for me. I
Right.
like.
All right. I'm going to turn off my camera and concentrate my bandwidth on audio, and let me know if that improves things.
Still causing. Doesn't seem to, just based off of the last couple of seconds, but you could give it a shot.
Okay.
Don't know if you have.
Yeah, another solution. The thing is, we were having weird internet issues here on Whidbey Island yesterday throughout the island. So it could be an island internet thing. So what I'm going to do is I'll bring in my phone and I'll do audio with my phone and video on the computer. So just bear with me as I get plugged in here.
That may work.
And I'll let you guys carry the beat in the meantime.
Well, I'm also hoping that James is finishing up with his sandwich as well to join part of the CSI conversation. But yeah, let's just do the technical issues, I think, unless someone wants to carry the ball.
Well, I'm here, all right. I'm just kind of being polite and staying off camera because I'm smoking. Is that all? You're all,
oh, of course, yeah. You're fine, James. It's just technical difficulties. Don't worry.
Yeah, I mean,
no problems with like I don't mind if you smoke.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. Some people in a Zoom meeting would take offense to you smoking in a Zoom meeting. Like, I never got that myself. Like, but it has been said once or twice. Like, so
smoking. Did you know that smoking was part of the existential polymeta crisis?
Possibly, yeah. I know that it's part of my crisis anyway.
As long as you're aware.
Yeah, just part of my crisis anyway. But I'll leave Jim and carry take off as soon as he gets his technical sorted out anyway, because again, I mean, if you're asking what is CSI, from my opinion, I mean, all I can say is that I'm by no means anyway a kind of have been into computers. If anything, I'm a bit of a computer dinosaur, to be honest. As regards to technical side of things and everything else, I'm just basically I got involved and got interested in Jamin's idea of collective superintelligence block party because I had been listening to some of his former podcasts, which was out under a different name at the time. And but it was because of the topics of conversation that were going on in their podcast that drew me in, and I started listening to the conversations because I was interested in the subjects matter basically, and interested in the different types of situations we find ourselves globally in anyway at the present time. And they were talking about how do we come together and deal with these issues unless we can come together and put our minds together. So in other words, the idea was to build a collective human, I call it a human intelligence, but collective CS, collective super intelligence, but with people basically putting their minds together to tackle the issues that need to be tackled in our everyday lives and on a global kind of scale. That's about the best way I can understand it in average common layman's terms I'm talking, because I think it's very important for us as well to get that message across that this is for everybody, for the average common lay person as well. Like, it's not something that's there for the person who's technically inclined or knows a lot about computers or gets intimidated but just by the idea of the words collective super intelligence. That kind of, when I heard that mention of that, and when Jamin started the Block Party the first week, I didn't join it. The first week I joined in the second week. The first week I was hesitant because I didn't think I had any place in that kind of conversation with people who were talking about collective super. That, I'm just an ordinary Joe Soap from Cork City, like here in Ireland, and I'm just concerned about I'm concerned about my daughter's future and the future of our planet and all of life on it at the moment, because of where we find ourselves at this place and time. Like, these are the subjects that Jamin and the rest of the people were talking about, and there were conversations I wanted to get involved in, and possibly have my say in it as well, my input, which is basically where CSI comes into it, and where Jamin is talking about people being able to get involved in conversations that get to the point of both, whatever it is that's important and critical to those people at the time, wherever they may be on the planet, whatever their issue may be. It's to get involved with other people like-minded people who find themselves in that similar predicament or position, and getting together in conversation as to how we can come together and deal with the problem. But the idea of collective super intelligence for me then, where Jamin went on to the technical side of it, is that those conversations are already happening all over the world. The problem is that they're not connected. And this is where he explained it to me in an idea that I can understand, is that although the conversations are happening, they're not really all connected in a proper sense. Yes, there's millions, billions of people out there that are actually trying to do the right thing in the world. As George Monbiot said there in the podcast yesterday on Cricket, that there's, we're living in a situation where there's a vast majority of us are good people who want the right thing for the planet, but we're being run by a small minority of psychopaths. Like, so the idea is that for me, collective superintelligence, the idea is that whether you're concerned with what's going on in your local community, you want to help people in whatever. It could be a homeless issue, it could be feeding people, it could be climate related, it could be political. The point is that whatever it is that drives your passion is to get involved in conversations with other like-minded people to try and do something to solve these passions. And then, in other words, for these conversations to be connected, agreed for your conversations to be recorded, online conversations to be recorded. You're not to hide, you're only trying to help people. Once they're agreed to be recorded, then they're also transcribed. And then let the AI come into it, where the AI can cross-reference all these conversations and transcribe conversations and put them together.
James, no, Gavin wants to speak on what you've been saying. And Jamin, I want to say James carried that admirably in your absence, but go ahead, Gavin.
I'm just confused. Are we here to listen to James talk about his worldview, or what are we doing here?
Well, I was only told that it was to ask the question, what is it to me, does collective superintelligence mean to me?
It was based on the conversation we've been having with Jamin last week as well, and then with the Twitter space yesterday, kind of, Gavin.
Okay.
So like when humans come together and like cohere.
Can we be more succinct about that process, or?
That's actually kind of what we're here. And Jamin, we just had a 2-hour conversation about this yesterday. Do you want to try and say what is CSI again?
Yeah, sure. But I just want to make sure Gavin is heard and his concerns are addressed. So, Gavin, are you cool with us taking a stab at the definition of CSI?
Yes, of course. I was just confused because we're not really passing around talking. It was turning into a monologue by James, and I don't mean to be disrespectful. I also want us to be mindful of each other's presence and time and awareness and attention.
Yeah, and
Understood.
also no problem, and also consider that the microphone was kind of thrown at James because of the technical issues here, so he was kind of carrying it for us. So thank you, James, and we look forward to hearing from everyone here.
No bother, and just apologies to Gavin. I didn't mean to go on right, Gavin. I was just giving my interpretation of CSI as to the question that I thought was being asked. Either way, the point is, there's no problem. I kind of misplaced what I was supposed to do. I just went on too much. My apologies.
May I speak up for a moment?
Go ahead,
okay?
Victor. Go ahead.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
please.
So first off, I wanted to acknowledge contextually, Gavin, our sensitivity to ensuring that there's space for everyone to speak. I think I understand clearly, like some cases where like we felt that wasn't true, and so like part of the collective intelligence here is us like being able to give voice to those kinds of tensions and make sure that we all share the floor. So I appreciate you doing that. And also I wanted to share that, like, yeah, James, when I was listening to you, what was resonating for me was like like I'm a 45-year-old white dude in California that like what can I possibly do about global scale issues? And yet, like we have this we are able to take up the topic and like describe and like find our own place in bringing it about. It's like this is about as decentralized and democratic as it gets. It's just like we're self-nominating, that we should take up the cause of exploring like what collective superintelligence even means, and to have a role in like actuating it. And I think that's really beautiful. So I appreciate kind of like bringing in the first person, like your connection to it. I think that's accessible to everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Victor.
Thanks,
Thank you. Honestly, my apologies. I thought that I was like covering for Jamin first while he was getting his technical difficulties out. So, but also I was just giving my. I thought I was asked a question as to what it all means to me, CSI. So I kind of went into it.
Well, I did ask you that question, James. Don't worry. And
no
Jamin,
worry.
we're bringing ourselves full circle here too. Jamin, what the fuck, CSI?
All right. So CSI, so I see kind of three, and this is totally emergent, right? And everyone feel free to jump in and interrupt and disagree and add your own stuff. But what I see with the emergent definition from, in my mind anyway, that I'll share, is that there are kind of three layers to it. One is the operational / physical, like what is it physically, right? And Myriad, I'm just going to use Zoom as a proxy, though it could be any platform or any combination of platforms. But imagine, and I'll throw out the number 1 million Zoom rooms. Imagine that 0.1% of humanity, aka 8 million people, are distributed amongst 1 million Zoom rooms, implying an average of 8 people per Zoom room, average. And that all of these Zoom rooms are hyper-connected. What does that mean to be hyper-connected? Well, the simplest way that they can be hyper-connected is if there is some sort of a map or a database of all of these million Zoom rooms and the topics they're discussing and who is in each Zoom room, and all that could be could exist on, say, a website where people can scroll through, search through, browse through, and see the different Zoom rooms, and then join any one that they want at any given time and jump around from Zoom room to Zoom room. So the hyperconnectivity in this case, in what I've discussed so far, is in two forms. One, a central, a centralized or decentralized database sharing all the different Zoom rooms and what they're discussing. And the other is the cross-pollination of people being able to jump from Zoom room to Zoom room. Another form of hyperlinkage could be the recording, broadcasting, and transcription of each Zoom room and their conversation, and making that accessible to all the other Zoom rooms. So that's the first layer, is the physical / operational. What is it in physical terms? The other two layers kind of build off of that. But before I get to the other two layers, I'm going to pass the mic and hear from everyone else.
Whoever wants to go, take it, please. I know Daniel and Marco are here. Gavin, please, or Victor.
So, I wanted to share back a little of what I've been hearing from, I think, both James's and Jamin's perspective on this. So the collective human superintelligence is something about actually connecting people and connecting people's ideas, and the kind of venue that we're talking about is one of many rooms, many people, many conversations, gathering together people who are able to do the thing where we talk and exchange ideas, and we can reason about them directly. When it comes to enabling collective superintelligence, I hear a gesture towards a kind of scale where any individual group is probably not going to be having the direct conversation with any other individual group, at least not initially. So how to go about creating the conditions, to share information and create a synergistic intelligence across, these distributed groups. And so I'm hearing you say something like, well, the information that comes out of those groups can be as James has said, transcribed and processed via AI, so as to identify what salient intentions or ideas or come up with in one group, and then make that accessible to others. Is that roughly what I was hearing?
Jamin, I don't know if you want to respond to that or not.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, yes. No, spot on, Victor. And go ahead, Mike.
You're on mute, Mike.
No, I know. I have to handle something. I'll be right back.
So, just to share, this. So, thank you for affirming, Jamin. And what that means to me is this is something that's actually very alive for me these days, because I've been hosting an online digital space in which many conversations happen, each in little groups that aren't directly talking to each other, but with whom I share presence across them. So there's a version of what you are talking about, which is an invocation to all of us, to try to make more connections across the multiple individual contexts that we already live in. Beyond that, what I have been creating is a transcription, like a workflow for doing recording, transcription, and AI processing so as to enable the different people in different group contexts to kind of be aware of what others are talking about so as to create the conditions for like, oh, well, that's what those guys are talking about, or that's what that person is interested in. I'm interested in that too. I should reach out to that person so as to like, you know, enable the direct connection. So, you know, for me, like there's an angle in this conversation which is like, oh, I'm super interested to explore the kind of use cases for surfacing information generated in one context, you know, appropriately and relevantly into like another context. So it's like for me, it's like use cases, UX, you know, the design criteria that are going to make it possible to surface good information, you know, trustworthy, good information, you know, across contexts. So like there's that angle of it for me. Yeah, so that's what this means to me, and that's what my interest is in it at the moment.
Beautiful. I'll fill in for Mike while he's sorting out his stuff there. But yeah, that's absolutely spot on. You know, helping. I mean, one basic um, uh, cluster of features here is centered around precisely what you articulated so well, Victor. How do we help people find those other people and other conversations that map to their interests? And there's so many ways that we can do that. So I was just starting kind of with the most basic, which is transcription and making it all visible and transparent. What is it? All the conversations and all their transcripts, and also enabling people to hop into whatever conversation that they want within reason, you know, subject to basic guidelines of common decency, etc. And then through this process, you know, I kind of see it this exponential growth, not just exponential growth in numbers, but exponential growth in efficiency and functionality. And so over time, we'll get better and better at zeroing in and finding those conversations where we can have our maximal contribution. And our contribution may only last a minute, and then we're off to the next conversation where we can contribute maximally for another minute or 5 minutes or 5 hours, etc. Passing the feather. And if no one else is jumping in, I'll say a bit more. You know, all of this with a view to what? And here's where we get to the other layers of the definition of CSI. The second layer for me, beyond the operational, okay, so what? Okay, so all these people are hyper connected and they can find whatever conversations best map to their interests and passions and contributions, so that all of us participating can achieve a level of collective sense making that I know Daniel Schmachtenberger Azarian talks about a lot. And, you know, making sense of what? Of the world, of our problems, of our opportunities, etc. And then that brings us to the third layer so that we can take optimal action. And with that, I again pass the feather.
Here we go. I'm just going to throw in where I think the collective intelligence is very effective is putting together people with great experience, great technical skill that have maybe either through being self-taught or taught in industry or traditionally going to, college and university, and throws us together in a way where those that for whatever reason didn't have income or just the concentration to study and learn how to do some advanced exploration of our world in different areas. That the people that are passionate about taking care of this planet, and just as one example of a use for collective superintelligence, is it takes the masses that haven't had the luxury of education, and it takes people who have been at it long enough that they can explain it easily and simply, so that these people are brought into being able to make informed decisions, which just, to me, that simplicity is, and that ability, I've seen it happen here, in the block party, where if you come in, somebody comes in and has no clue of how weather patterns work or how the weather system works, and have 4 or 5 meetings where we have a climatologist and different naysayers as far as the doom we're facing with global warming, and those that say it's all made up. And I've seen people that just spouted all kinds of rhetoric be exposed to a couple more educated people in here, and that makes the whole smarter. The sum of the parts is the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and it transfers. It's the power shift, the new paradigm we need, where education is actually comes about naturally through interconnectedness. With that, I pass the feather.
All right. In the absence of other folks jumping in, and I can't emphasize enough, everyone, please jump in whenever you have something to say or a question to ask or an objection to anything or whatever. Please jump in. Anything that's ever been accomplished by humanity has been a result of collective human intelligence. And I made the point yesterday in the Twitter Spaces that from the dawn of humanity, we have been a species of collective human intelligence. And we're born into collective human intelligence. I mean, if you try to, anyone who's exempt from collective human intelligence is like a wild child or someone who's just completely disconnected from other human beings. I'm going to be watching a movie at some point in the next week called Casper or something. It's this German movie where it is about a wild child. And so I'm deeply fascinated in what happens if someone's separated from collective human intelligence. But other than such rare examples, we are all immersed in collective human intelligence, not just from birth, but before birth, getting all these messages and signals and vibrations from our mothers and et cetera. And I've talked about how with the evolution of technology, we've been able to achieve greater forms of collective human intelligence, albeit overlaid on top of a substrate of a deeply flawed paradigm of capitalism, hoarding, what Daniel Pinchbeck calls the possession trance, what Daniel Schmachtenberger calls the all-day monopoly game. And so we've had kind of this weird, exotic, and frankly toxic mix of collective human intelligence with capitalism. And so part of the opportunity I see in going from collective human intelligence to collective super intelligence is that we can really diagnose the patient, being life on Earth, including all of humanity, diagnose this toxic mix and all the toxic mixes and all the issues that we have, including existential crises, mega problems, polycrisis, etc., and really deeply diagnose what our problems are, how did we get here, and how we might get out of the woods, so to speak, and off onto a new trajectory towards, for lack of a better word, utopia. And with that, I pass the feather.
Let me throw a question at you, Jamin. If can you hone in a little bit more on where, you talked about we've always had collective human intelligence. Where's that intersection where we change from collective human intelligence to collective super intelligence?
Yeah, and that gets back to kind of the physical or operational definition of collective superintelligence that I was offering earlier, which is where we somehow get to a place where there are a very large number of Zoom rooms of people having conversations that are hyper-connected and self-aware. So each person in each conversation is self-aware that they're part of this larger network that is hyper-connected in all the ways that we've been talking about, for precisely those scenarios that we've been talking about people being able to find those conversations where they can, that best map to their interests and passions and how they want to best contribute. Just as an example, I've spent the last 10 years looking for people like you all, right? And we kind of hit a small plateau in what I refer to as the flat line of the exponential, where we just weren't growing. And then 2 weeks ago, I met Mike Hillcoat, and then days after that, Victor, Gavin, etc., and reconnected deeply with Brett. And here we are, and it's just like, wow, hallelujah. That took 10 years for that to happen, for me to achieve this level of connection. So I want to, and yet we have the capability to go from a 10-year lag time to, a second, literally, with a bot saying, hey, there's this group over there talking about the things that you, Jamin, are super passionate about. Click on this link and you'll be in the room with them, right? So it's this kind of final step. All these conversations are happening. They exist. It's just that we're not hyper-connected to each other, right? And so I feel like we are very, very close to getting to that point. And I envision an exponential taking us there. So we've just gone from flatline to the knee of the exponential. Let's ride that knee to its logical conclusion, which for all intents and purposes looks pretty vertical. And that's the juicy part of the exponential, where we're growing by leaps and bounds.
Perfect. So in other words, it's we know that we've got the volume of the right kinds of conversations going on. It's just a matter of connecting enough of them together that's going to give us that exponential. That's the switch to super intelligence.
It's largely that, but there's another factor, which is when you talk about the right kinds of conversations going on. I think that, and here, here is relevant the toxicity of capitalism and hoarding and all the destruction of the planet that entails, which is not only deeply distracting to conversations like these, but has people in a state of addiction to hoarding, and addiction to money, etc., and ego and things like that, keeps conversations from getting right, right? And we're still figuring out how to get our conversations right. I mean, you know, a few minutes ago, James was kind of shut down when he was in a beautiful flow. And so, you know, how do we get in right relationship to each other where we can just flow, right? I don't want people to feel shut down, and so I'd like for some healing to occur in that regard, because we're in the process of sorting this out. In fact, I complimented Mike Hillcutt at the end of yesterday's Twitter space for precisely letting people flow. He was, you know, he does a great job of hosting. I can't wait till he comes back and helps us out here. But I was like really impressed because he was letting people flow in a way that a younger version of myself would not have, right? And so I'm actually really concerned about the very state of this conversation. How do we get back into flow, and how do we heal the shutting down that happened? I'd love to hear from you, Gavin. Go for it.
Yeah. So 2.5 years ago, I joined Clubhouse, and what you're describing, it was exactly my experience, where I essentially had access to, I mean, it's not millions, because one, I can't even, like, barring some kind of upgrade in my processing power, I can't even like process that much. Like, but I know, given if I see a room with 13 of my friends in it, I know that that conversation is going to be great. I know that it's going to be highly relevant and meaningful to me, given like who's in it. Okay, so suddenly I had this whole world opened up to me where you know, imagine walking into a huge ass restaurant and you have a little conversation bubble above every single table, and you have access to every single one of those tables. Okay, so I like really capitalized on that, and I began to expand what you are articulating and like experience that firsthand. Part of that process was beginning to try and run conversations, find out what does and doesn't work, what causes more flow, less flow, experiencing firsthand what it looks like to have a blockage in flow. And now I'm going to be completely frank, because that's the only real way to be honest in this situation, which is, James, when you speak for 5 minutes, it actually causes a little bit of blockage. And that is given a lot of experience in these sort of circumstances that I am saying that. It's not because I didn't like what you were saying or I didn't agree with you or something like that. It's that, like, I think it's important for us to upgrade the model of where we're at and what we're trying to communicate, and the sense of how many people are in the room and what's going on. And I didn't get the sense that you were very conscious of that. So, look, I love you all, and I'm speaking as honestly and frankly as I possibly can here. So, given my experience, that's what I was trying to communicate.
That's no problem, Gavin. I understand where you're coming from, but I just on my own part there, like when we came in there, like as I said, Jamin, I had said prior to us starting, like I prefer if Jamin starts off, because I have no idea what it is I'm supposed to, that we're going to be talking about. Obviously, I said I don't plan ahead of anything to say. I'm more of a reactive person, I said. So I was hoping that Jamin would, you know, carry the conversation start at the start, and I'd maybe then have something relevant to say to what he was saying or whatever. Unfortunately, he had technical difficulties. I did apologize at the very start before he said it, and said, I'm not sure, no. what I'm supposed to be saying here, but I'll only respond to the question I heard, which is what is CSI to me? And so I just kind of gave my explanation what it meant to me. I apologize if I went on too long for you, but I was only responding to what I'm saying. Again, I'm only saying like that. For me, I'm lost in most of these conversations. I was hoping to just be floating in the wind here today and listening to most of you guys and seeing what it is that you're talking about building in relation to what your ideas about CSI are. So I didn't really want to be talking, to be honest, today at all. I said that to Jim at the start, and he was saying, no, you talk. And I was saying, I don't really want to. I prefer to listen today. So I apologize if I went on too much, Gavin. I understand where you're coming from. And to be honest, I would have been prepared to be listening more to you guys today than listening to myself. So apologies.
Cool. No, I don't. I hear you, and like I said, I love each and every one of you, and at the end of the day, like I hope that I just want to see us be more and more cohesive and coherent with one another. So part of that is me saying exactly what I think. So no hard feelings, of course.
No, none whatsoever, Gavin. And you're a man after my own heart. I prefer to say what I think as well. I speak my mind, and I wouldn't. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate your honesty. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you both for jumping in there. I feel like the healing that I mentioned has been achieved. I feel that anyway. I feel much better about the flow right now. So let's continue in that spirit of honesty, and also I for one try to practice concision. So as soon as I even have a notion that I'm going on too long, I just say passing the feather, even if I'm practically mid-sentence. One thing I'd like to throw into the mix is I'd like to read out loud what Daniel Schmachtenberger Azarian has written into the chat. In essence, collective superintelligence represents a pinnacle of collaborative cognitive achievement, harnessing the strengths of diverse individuals and advanced technologies to address challenges and create opportunities at scales and complexities beyond the reach of individual human minds. I think that's beautiful and concise and really touches on a lot of points, and I'm passing the feather.
Can you hear me okay? I've got some kind of 80s party happening across the street. They've been singing We Are the World all day, integrated with Christmas. Actually, Jamin, you fit right in. Exactly. I don't know what I'm talking about. It's literally been the greatest hits of James. Right? Oh my God. It's bizarre. I don't even know what's going on. I'm in Cairo, for those of you that wouldn't know, but there's actually an expat bar across the street. So sometimes it's mixed with the expat, and there's a big soccer field. Well, football field, but of course I'm being American. I'm like, fuck soccer, but yeah, it's whack. It's just really unusual. And the songs and it's just really weird. There's just a high strangeness in Cairo. I think I would just like to throw in the mix, in terms of honesty, I would say, like, I've been in these conversations for a long time, so I feel like I'm going over grounds that I'm so super familiar with, and I wonder how we perceive ourselves as a conversation right now outward to others. Do we kind of perceive ourselves as to be like partially like informing, like educating potentially people about CSI, or are we ourselves trying to understand what it is so that we may be it or something like that? I'm wondering where it leads to, and then like some of the ways we describe how it might affect the world or how powerful it is, that's been my life for like 10 years. And there's a lot of platforms and innovations that can carry out those, like that spec that we're talking about. So for me, that's all happening like right now. Like that's what the planet is up to, of course, because we're talking about it, right? So like, I wonder, are we a voice of CSI to some degree? And the reason I put that definition, quote unquote, in there is because I'm like, let's just have something we can all look at to me and say, well, yeah, of course. Like we can change that. We could spin it. We could say it from 7 different worldviews or 20 different lexicons. But generally, I think we all know what CSI is, right? In a way, like I think we all know what it is. And I wonder, yeah, I wonder if the conversation can include somehow what is our CSI or something? Like, what is our contribution to that? Something like that. I'm not quite clear, but that was what was on my mind.
One of the aspects that I'm thinking about, it's kind of moot if we have the means by which to express CSI if you don't have the operating system. So as to say, unless you have a population of people who are radically curious, and let me repeat that, radically curious about the world, it doesn't really matter what platforms we have. Like, for humanity to wake up more and more, we have to be paying attention to what's going on more and more. And so if I were to say we were to highlight anything, it's that we have to keep on expressing how much attention we should be paying to our surroundings.
Well, I would agree with that 100% anyway, because it's like, as I said, it's probably one of my main motivations for getting interested in Jamin's original conversations prior to him starting the Bloc Party, was because those were the conversations they were talking about, were the situation we find ourselves in globally, and we're all in the same boat together. You know what I mean? So we need to face the problems in order to come together collectively to deal with the problems. So that was like, that's what personally drew me into the conversations that were taking place in the Bloc Party then in the start. Like, so Jamin's the man behind collective superintelligence. I thought that's a good idea to get, that's what we need, is to get people together, get them collectively working together on the big, the poly crisis and all the issues that need to be fucking worked on. Sorry for the language. My main concern, as I said, was a personal issue, because of the fact that I just happened, became very much aware of what was, I am very much up on the geopolitical and the climate and everything else, so I'm very aware of the situation, and I'm concerned for my daughter, my family, my community, and life in general. That's all it is. That was the only reason that drew me into those conversations from the very beginning. As with, for the collective intelligence side of it, as I always said to Jamin, I don't know about that. Unless people are actually aware of that the fucking sky is falling on top of them, they're not going to stand around and together and do something about it. It's that I think the world is too divided in a sense for that, like in the, in the state it's in at the moment anyway. So as you said, I agree with what you said, unless you can find a certain amount of people who are, as you said, actively want to get involved in something like this, then it's not going to work in a sense, like. But that is exactly what Jamin is talking about. I think that is, I suppose, in a sense, what this podcast is about, is to try and reach out to find people who are actively want to try and do something like this. I don't know the technicalities of getting it up. As you said, there's already the platforms out there and everything else. I don't know anything about any of that. As I said, I'm a bit of a dinosaur in that area. My main concern is basically, I'm just a concerned citizen of the world, and for the way I see the whole world going to this day, and I think we all need to collectively get our heads together and try and do something about it. And if that's collective superintelligence needed to do that, then that so be it, or there's another trajectory, another avenue. I don't know. Point is, I'm only here because of my concern. I don't know what that is or what that would contribute to anything, other than I'm interested in the conversation. That what used to be taking place in the Block Party all along. Here I find myself invited to this conversation. I don't even know my place in it. You know what I mean? So, and hence I went on talking too much earlier on, which I'm doing now. Sorry, Gavin.
So what I'm hearing is like, yeah, there's when we talk about things like um the problems of the world, right? And instrumentalizing collective superintelligence as a means to resolve them. That I'm hearing themes of like, well, um, what are the conditions, that allow for collective superintelligence to meaningfully change, the state of the world? This is like a connection of like, you know, uh, the intelligence with action. Yeah. Uh, and so like, I think that's an interesting like uh, like theme to explore is like, what creates the conditions for collective superintelligence? What creates the conditions for transforming that intelligence into meaningful action? I think what's at the top of my mind for the like conditions for collective superintelligence, I'm hearing like that it depends upon the state of the people that are in it. I'm hearing from Gavin like that like part of that is that the people contributing to that collective superintelligence like ought, to be radically curious. That's interesting. Is it worth exploring like the kind of qualities of collective superintelligence? How we can better show up to enable it? And through that kind of exploration, shape, the way that we're operating here so as to be more in conformance with that.
Yes, awesome, Victor. And Gavin, yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So when I say radical curiosity, I don't say that as a doing action. I say that as a being action. And within like an ontological hierarchy, it initially says data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. And so if we look at intelligence as a relative form, so high level of knowledge, and the scaling of information or intelligence into some kind of expression or being of wisdom. What I'm proposing is that necessarily must entail radical curiosity to fulfill the feedback loop of that, where you go, what do I not know? What do I not know? What do I not know? What do I not understand? What am I not? What perspective am I missing? How do I become more embodied? How do I become more? How do I empower others to empower myself? It's not about you or me, it's about I and I, or something of that nature.
I'll jump in since no one's jumping in. I I really like what you're saying about radical curiosity. I also like what Victor was raising about the conditions for collective superintelligence. And I think one of the conditions for collective superintelligence to exist is a critical mass of people doing what we're doing, which is boldly delving into it, jumping into it, not quite knowing what we're jumping into, but jumping in anyway because we are radically curious. And this gets back to what Daniel was raising about, what is our role? Are we the voice of CSI? Are we figuring out what CSI is? I would say both of those. And the mental model that's emerging for me is there have to be other groups like us who are delving into these very same questions. And it becomes a little bit of a chicken and egg thing, because if we had CSI, we could find those other groups because we'd all be hyper connected to the same database, and we could find them and say, hey, let's do a mixer, let's do a mashup, let's get together, right? So while we're struggling with those or working with those chicken and egg dynamics, I say we basically just keep doing what we're doing, keep at it, and we'll, just like a kid who's trying to juggle a soccer ball for the first time, just keep doing it, right? And have a high tolerance for frustration as we do. Passing the feather.
Yeah.
Find myself having to really listen and then just be quiet if I'm going to embody radical curiosity. I think the way you described it, like if I tried to do it, I find myself in this sort of famous situation where I think Rumi said, like, if you really want to know God, just sit in silence. I think there's something like everything else is a facsimile or something, just to make the point about being present, like to what is. So yeah, in being radically curious, I thought to myself, like, well, I'm usually talking about what I know. If I don't talk about what I know, how do I talk about what I don't know? And I was curious if there was a language even, or a tool set, or some, not that it has to be that complicated, but I'll just say that crossed my mind. Like if I'm always talking about what I know, really, to some degree, and then otherwise I have to shut up if I'm radically curious. I don't know what it means yet. That's what occurred to me.
So hearing that, well, hold on. I think there was an echo there. Sorry about that. So there's two moves that I think are really that help to instrumentalize curiosity into something that can be approached through collective intelligence. So one of those things is like noticing, noticing when there's something that sparks curiosity, and the other is like transforming that noticing into some kind of an inquiry. So like if there's something I don't know, then like to me that can be held as like you can kind of stay in the curiosity by like articulating it as an inquiry. Hence, like the kind of things that I was curious about was like connecting what are the conditions for collective superintelligence? What are the conditions for transforming that into like effective action? So those were inquiries that came up for me, and then I then articulated.
Well, I suppose in a nutshell, without me going on, and I probably could have said that, no, in that simple sentence that you said there, Victor, would have covered everything I said at the very start, because that is it, like in a sense, like is for me anyway. How do we put these, conversations into action, direct action? So Like, it's the connectivity. That's the way I see it. Anyway, what Jamin is talking about is the reason behind all the conversations is the essence is the connectivity behind them, the super connectivity behind them. We say with AI, and to get the right people in the right rooms to have the right conversations at the right appropriate time to tackle the art to tackle the actions required for whatever the subject it is that their subject matter they're dealing with. In other words, it's not just having conversations, it's actually acting on the conversations, coming up with constructive ways to deal with the problems and acting on them quicker. So in other words, we become a more concise, we're able to more concisely communicate and act quicker on the problems that need to be addressed quicker, and a lot of them are on an existential trajectory already. So we need to be catching up on them fairly quick. So we need existential action, in other words, or exponential action. So you know what I'm saying? Exponential action against existential problems. Simple as that. And the only way we can do that is by getting together. This is my understanding now in layman terms, so forgive me. So that is my understanding of it. You know what I mean? And I don't know how that can be achieved or the intricacies of or anything else like that. I don't, honestly. I just know that that is what's urgently required in the world today. Because if we don't actively get together, put our minds together and deal with the problems that are coming down on us, barreling down on us very quickly, then, all else is mute. That's the way I see it. So I'll leave it at that.
Again, I'll jump in since no one else is, though I'm also learning to just shut the bleep up and be with it. I feel and think that we're a lot closer than we may think, because I think what we're doing right here is an attractor, and we may need to stick with it for a while for that attractor beam to really warm up and attract more people. I'll just say like us, but I don't really mean people like us. I just can't find better words, because we also want diversity and thought and whatnot to really get this massive parallax that is our birthright. But I think the fact that a bunch of people like us are already here delving in and doing the really hard work of these first days of inquiry and collaboration, I think that I find it incredibly attractive, and anyway, I'll talk about the Vulcan mind meld subsequently. Back over to you, Gavin.
Well, I'd like to proffer again. I mentioned this in the last time. Started opening silent spaces on Twitter a couple months ago every day for as long as my phone would allow me without disconnecting. So I don't know if y'all want to do that. That would be the embodiment as far as I can tell. Like you described, Brett, you're like, well, I find that I have to just be quiet and observe. And that's literally the conclusion that I reached that brought me to, well, what's the most publicly accessible platform that is the expression of CSI and the embodiment of like what we know to be the most radically curious thing we can do. So I don't know, just saying.
I like the combination of both to some degree, although I would be up for the experiment. But so what came up for me was like, and I don't know this very well, but I've always heard about the Quakers. And when they have like a meeting, I think they sit in silence and really only people speak when they really feel called to, for whatever that means, you know. There's different ways of looking at it, but I've always been attracted on some level to that. And I guess that's also probably similar to some of the indigenous technologies that folks would talk about, which I don't have as much experience with, which is often just sitting pretty much in quiet, I think, and only speaking when the spirit moves you in a sense. And I think that might be a halfway ground, Gavin, as well, where it doesn't feel too stressful maybe for people to think, oh, I just came to meditate, you know, or something. But it's interesting, even just practicing what we've done tonight, which is not our normal MO, is also interesting from an observation standpoint. The fact that we've had some longer moments of silence already is interesting, of a collective intelligence happening potentially live, you know?
Yeah, I honestly, I felt in the moments of silence, I was hoping a couple times that they'd last even a little bit longer, because I felt it's like I could almost feel the vibration of of the gears in our heads working, you know, together. It's like everybody had a thought that they wanted to hold on to and get a better grasp of before they spoke again. So it's I felt it really felt beautiful for me.
I'm struck by what you said there, Marco, because Victor and I were talking about what constitutes meaning the other day. And if you have like repetition in your life, there's something that's like, it becomes kind of unremarkable, or it's so ingrained. And if you sit in silence, you know, for let's take the absurdium reductum, you sat in silence for 10 years. The first words that came out of your mouth would be very meaningful. There'd be a lot of people paying attention to what those first few words were that came out of your mouth. And so it gets this pregnant kind of the potential energy just kind of builds and builds and builds.
I don't know why I get these sometimes. These things are way funnier in my head than they are when they come out of my mouth. But when you said that, you know, I really was imagining that 10 years of silence, and then, you know, an audience expecting, you know, just all kinds of amazing things, and you know, you'll walk up to the podium, stub your toe on it, go, God damn it. uh,
That would be a really cool short film, dude. I love that. If it ended like that, that could easily be made into like an 8-minute film or something. Yeah, or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd actually like to almost mimic myself, because I have this big dream of holding like this big press conference to announce this existential prize idea with everyone there on stage and introducing everybody. It'd be really cool if like I did all that and did all the marketing promoting and finally got like press releases, and then like I walk up to the stage and like I trip and knock myself out and go into a coma. It's like, that's it. There's the existential prize. Somebody else has to take over now. All that planning is just like out the window.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Hearing Marco, like what was coming up for me was remembering reading The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and remembering, the population had built the supercomputer and it needed to run for like 1 million years to answer the question of the life, the universe, and everything. And the first thing out of its mouth was, or the answer was 42, right? Like that the information that comes out, may or may not be ready to be received by those that are hearing it.
Yeah.
Another part that was coming up was like, I think there's something actually really wise about the Quaker practice of not speaking unless you feel spoken through, or however it's phrased. Because there's something in intelligence that depends upon the quality of the information that's present, to process with that intelligence. And so like a practice of being deliberate about what we're putting into the space is a way of, increasing the signal to noise ratio, if you will. I'll put the feather back. There's the signal to noise thing that was bubbling up for me.
Yeah, I think it's be slow to speak and quick to listen, and slow about wrath. For man's wrath doesn't work out God's righteousness. They take that from the book of James. So yeah, that it's good advice, I suppose, for a lot of people to be slow to speak, quick to listen.
I appreciate the maybe irony isn't even the right not exactly what I want to say, but I appreciate James quoting the book of James.
I have a question. So, if I were to monopolize this space and continue to talk and not let others speak, and just drone on about this or that, and have a fairly low like signal to noise ratio on what I'm saying, how would the space deal with that? I'm thinking like of sort of normative behavior within these collective superintelligence spaces. How to we have gathered, and I think we are doing a fair job of sharing time and being deliberate about what we're saying, and also like, having a spirit of like fun and play as well.
Well, I know the way we've dealt with it in the past is as long as the flow works, we don't do we may let people it just works out. Some will talk more than others and a little bit longer. And if it goes too far, then we just say, okay, we've got so many people, so much to say. We're going to start raising our hands and use a queue. And then, Jamin or I or someone will take charge of the queue and make sure it's followed. And it's not never been a huge problem. And actually, there was one point it was fun during the block party. The earlier days for me, probably around I think in like the 16th week or somewhere around there. Jamin did actually have a couple of us have hand signals to let him know when he got too loquacious, because he realized, himself that he would get carried away sometimes. So it's like we had hand signals.
But generally as well, I suppose the idea for the block party and being 24-hour was that it was a long format. So if anybody had something to say, and if just whatever they were saying was interesting, people will listen as long as they wanted to talk. And obviously then, put their hands up if they have any questions for them. Like if they were going on too long, of course, then someone would put their hand up and interject and say, just politely say to them, like, we give somebody else a chance, or whatever, or you're droning on there too much, like I was, but either way, but it's good that somebody, can do that, and that the person that was talking doesn't take offense to it either, of course, that's important too. But I mean, you don't always get that. I mean, but generally speaking, people who come to these conversations come for the conversation, so they're not coming to mess around, it's very rarely that happens. Basically common courtesy, as we say it.
And then there's always when we get larger groups too, then we'll always make a note that people can use the reactions to raise their hand, so that if they have something to say, it doesn't get lost in, only part of us doing the talking. So anytime you throw use the reactions button and put a hand up, that's a clue in case whoever's kind of taking ownership of moderating misses the fact that somebody's getting too long. And then there's sometimes when somebody gets a little long and somebody says, hey, points out very nicely that they went off track and they really wanted the conversation brought back, and then you'll get more than one opinion. Well, no, I really like what's going on there. Then it's like, hey, anybody that wants to continue on this track, we've got breakout room number so and so, and please, anybody that wants to focus on this, you're all welcome to go to that breakout room, and everybody who wants to do this can continue on this part of the conversation, just stay here. And then in the past too, we've had more structured hours during the day than right now. This is really this portion of it is the only thing we have curated.
Well, another cut at Victor's question is, at the very beginning of this meeting, I thought we had a really good example of how that was dealt with, right? Someone asked James to basically just talk while Jamin was figuring out his technicals, and then that was addressed by Gavin, and then I had stuff to say about that a few minutes later. I thought it worked itself to a very positive place. So whatever formula we're applying here, however undefined and unnamed, I think it's working, passing the feather.
Well, I would name that, like, okay, we are but one of these groups, and so far the one that I have been able to join to converse with. And so what I'm noticing being here with you is that each of you, I feel, are attentive and willing to speak up and willing to pass the feather, willing to to engage in good faith, etc., etc. And like part of that is due to like the experience that's been gained in doing it previously, where you're talking about kinds of norms or like facilitative moves that you apply. And so what's coming up for me is like if if there's a kind of meeting that this is, and that the theory of collective superintelligence generation is that of many more of these happening, then it may be worth providing an artifact for folks who would like to hold effective collective superintelligence sessions to follow, so as to increase the likelihood that they, are generative. So basically like a CSI playbook or something, or a meeting playbook. My product manager mind is starting to spin on this a bit, of like how to, assuming that one of the success factors looks like more of these separate groups, then the kind of thing to design for would be like, that would be a thing to design intentionally for, right? Oh, this is what it is. This is what success within the meeting looks like. This is what to do with the transcript or the recording afterwards. This is maybe like how to tag it in YouTube so that people can find more and more of them, and to the extent that YouTube is initially used as a coordination mechanism to enable different teams to find, or groups to find one another, right? So that's a kind of thing that I'd be interested to explore further. Doesn't necessarily need to happen here, but I'll put my hand up and say that like this is an inquiry that I've found, Jamin, and I'd love to get together during the coming week and see about like how to go about driving more collective superintelligence meetings as a success metric.
Beautiful. I'm all in. This is something that we within the Block Party and previous venues have thought about and talked about quite a bit. And where I've netted out is that the notion of culture, the culture of a meeting, right? We're kind of evolving and gravitating towards, silently or otherwise, a culture. And other meetings may have a completely different culture where people are like talking all the time and interrupting each other, and yeah, and there's barely a moment of silence. So I think if there were simply a way of articulating or specifying, this is a meeting that we're following this cultural norm, right, or set of norms or whatever, right, then people can self-select. I like being in meetings like this. I don't like being in meetings like that, etc. And one other thing I'll introduce, since we're talking about being an attractor and striving towards collective superintelligence, is well, I'm just going to throw a couple things out there. So I think of this as a Vulcan mind meld, and therefore I'm naming people like us Vulcans, right? Who are Vulcans, people who do mind meld. And my main aspiration in life right now is to be the Harvey Milk of Vulcans, right? That there's like a bunch of closet Vulcans out there who don't even have a name for themselves other than weird and out of place and suicidal and whatever, right? and I want us to create some sort of a virtual Castro district for people like us. Now, when they get to the Castro district, you know, there may be bars where there's loud music and people hooking up and all that. There may be, you know, quiet yoga studios and meditation groups, and there may even be a Quaker, you know, room. And I kind of think that's how it should be. We need to, you know, allow for different types and different cultures, etc., and at the same time come together, right, with something in common that binds us, which is collective superintelligence and the notion, the vision of that, and all that it can do for the world. Passing the feather.
I have to say, it makes sense to me that I guess I gravitate towards the specificity that we're talking about now. Because in my experience, it's not really a tipping point to have people get together in rooms, like based on sharing visions or something, or like talking. It's like people want more than, like, it's what, yeah, like people want more than that, like with their attention and the idea of like value and time spent and blah, 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 blah. But the specificity of seeing the collective superintelligence as the characteristic of for me, co-creation is my term. So it's like the characteristic, or the, you know, Soho of co-creation, since I'm from New York, New Jersey. I think that is really actually necessary conditions, even going to that question, Victor, like on at a different level or different question, different angle. There's this condition of diversity and that a world works for all, like Bucky Fuller kind of feeling. And we almost have to achieve the most unbelievable level of diversity that, again, somehow, like you said, Jamin, for you, it's like collective superintelligence is what binds us ultimately. Even if we're in the playroom or the BDSM co-creation room or the disco room or the Quaker room, there's still something. What is it? Like, I mean, I think I have my own answers, but I'm just saying that rhetorically. There's something like this fundamentally, yeah, like that is everyone knows they have in common. And it's usually something like the world they want to live in or the more beautiful world or whatever. Like a lot of people can understand that there's so many facets to a sophisticated, complex organism like a planet. Like there's so many ways and things that need to be done and will be done, that there's actually enough for everyone to do. But what's that kind of narrative or what's that glue that aligns us beyond disagreement or something? And, I feel like that's, Victor, also where the technology comes in, makes these kind of things scalable. So if not only do we have the rooms and the specificity, but we have that database, like we're saying, James, going back to the start of our conversation of like what technology is coming down the pipeline. Like it's a yes to everything. So all we have to do is dream it up. And I like, therefore, Victor saying, what can we dream up with the resources and the people we have now? Which for me is an act of CSI rather than a description of it, which I can't take any much more. And it might be a breakout room. It might be, because also, by the way, I'm sorry, going a little bit longer here, I understand, but I thought it was really important based on my research on CSI and co-creation. When I heard, Jamin, when I heard you be so clear about what you want to do, what you love doing, you want to be there, the concierge for the Castro district, you know, to bring me you're poor, you're sick, you're tired, you're not understood, you're weird. Like I heard a specific like function and passion and thing that is a part of a tapestry. Whereas there's people like me or my wife are like, yeah, we need that function, and here's the container. Like if you find those people and bring them in, like here's the database. Like here's the synergy engine, right? Like here's Togetherland and all the regenerative story living studios you can visit to come and live the new lifestyle of CSI. So I was also excited, James, and by you, like that's part of our system, by the way, like part of our onboarding, for lack of a better word. The new improved evolutionary profile, like finding out what people really love to do, not what they think they love to do, even sometimes, but finding out by doing things like this, and then helping them fulfill that beautiful thing that they love to do in the orchestra. And of course, you can play many instruments, so I don't want to get into you only get to do concierge and all that stuff. But I thought it was quite lovely, Jamin, to hear like what really matters to you and how that's actually, this is the difference between, even though we all have the same vision for a more beautiful world, that became like a money pit for us because it actually, we don't all have the same vision in a way. Like we all have that same meta vision in our hearts, but actually the way we go about it and our predilections and our personality types, like, do I like loud meetings? Do I like soft meetings? Like there's such uniqueness, individuality that for me, the goal is, the miracle is that we're going to actually be able to address the most unbelievable uniqueness without losing the communion of the thing that keeps us together. Like that to me is like almost mind blowing. Like for me, that's the holy grail, like the singularity or like free energy, like the ability for all of us to be exactly what we want to be. In the most hyper, for me, the most hyper individualistic, like the most hyper individuals, like it's all about me way. And somehow it's serving the whole in an effortless, like we were born to do these things, and there's no tension between me and we and I and you. They're all good. It's all good. Like it's all okay. We can be exactly who we want to be and still be selfless. That would be a miracle, but a miracle worth striving for me. Like, so I was a big yes and when I heard the two like juxtapositions, Victor, of like scale of intention, scope of intention we even used to talk about. Like what level of the fractal are you most like excited about? Like outward, inward. Like the shit gets really fucking sophisticated. It's like a particle accelerator. Like we're talking some serious innovation here, like on the planet, like from astrology to Web3 to psychology to social cognitive engineering, to give a shout out to our friend embodiment. Yeah, super exciting stuff. Thanks for listening. I understand I went a little long.
I'm feeling like, well, I will need to leave soon. But I don't know. Your share, Daniel, like like I don't know. There seemed to be like a lovely summary through line, um, and it felt like like maybe the song had drawn to a close. I know Gavin's going to be stepping out. I need to step out. Do we want to wrap here, or would you like to? Should we do like a round of like concluding thoughts?
Well, in traditional block party style, there is a transition anyway. I believe is a right, Marco? At top of the hour, is there a window for a different set of intentions, right? That like a different
Well,
part of the show, or
yeah. In this case, we all just go back to the main room for what we're calling the afterglow, and that way. Now, today, obviously, a couple of you have to leave and won't be able to take part in that, but that's how we're doing it right now. It may change But I think we'll always have at least a little bit of afterglow, maybe not as much as we scheduled for right now, which is,
For me, I'll be able to jump on, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Marco, but I'll be able to jump on via mobile and hang out for a bit whilst I go and pick up my son from school.
awesome.
So we're right on time in that case, Victor, and I think it would be cool to have a last round of reflections heading into the afterglow.
Just don't everybody fight for who talks first.
Well, I'll start off since I started off tonight, but I'll keep it short this time. For me, I enjoyed all the conversation. I know in a sense we're kind of floundering and trying to figure out what is this, what is it, what how can we do that, you know. It sounds like we're floundering in the dark ourselves, like, but I mean, the idea is that at the end of the day, somebody has to start off floundering in the dark until we all kind of come together and figure it out. But what we're mainly trying to do as well is draw more numbers in to help us figure it out, I suppose, in a sense. I don't know. The point is, for me, the conversation was good tonight. I know it was a bit all over the place in a sense because we're still trying to figure ourselves out. But it's important that we have the conversation and that we continue them anyway. So thank you to everyone.
I was happy with some of the questions that I heard. I know, Victor, you had a couple, like, how will we implement creating more of these spaces happening? And that's going to come out of the conversations as we go. We've been getting closer and closer. Eventually, we're going to, you hit on the right formula or just the right number of people. And you said something also earlier about being in several groups and being, the one person that is consistent in all the groups. And and I like something that Stan Pokras brings up all the time. He has like a little video that he'll even play that shows the strength of weak ties. And I think that's going to be very, very important to the, making this all come about is really taking advantage of the people that are just that strength between, the weak tie between the strong groups. And really, I think we're going to learn to leverage that a lot more.
Yeah, I like that. I think, yeah, what's coming up for me is like, well, the processing that I did, gave me some clarity to like what to look for, in collective or in these sorts of meetings. Or rather, like, so for me, I was like, oh, well, I think noticing things is important. I think being curious, like finding inquiries, like discovering, like when people have like intentions that they want to fulfill. Like part of this for me, when I think like the reason why that's important to me is because, again, I am using generative AI in order to do some of the heavy lifting of going through transcription to find something valuable to share, right? And so in order to do that, like, you need to apply some kind of processing. So that processing could just be summarize this But if there's something that's specific for someone, right, giving them a direct, like, oh, here's what was said, or here's like the opportunity that connects with you, or like, here's the inquiry and the problem that these people are facing, and that, and then framing that in a way that's easily consumable and doesn't require maybe reading like, a page long or multiple pages of transcription. Like, getting the valuable thing that's valuable to share to someone else is like, is important. And so having something like an ontology um, for uh, the whatever derives from the transcript that's going to then be made available to people, like, is useful, because then I can design using that ontology. The other thing was like the yeah, so just a general interest in getting together, like I had said, Jamin, for what to do to drive more of these. Is that something that we can design for as well?
I'll make a quick comparison that happened for me. Is when you think, my impression is, I've recently this year I've done indigenous plant medicine journeys, like and before my first one, I expected it's like you see in some movies where they go, they're looking for these answers, and they go in and they get all the answers when they go in there, and everything makes sense. And my experience has been that it's not. I didn't get all the answers when I had my journey, but it sure gave me a list of questions and things I had to look at, and a list of things that needed tending to in order for things to then make sense. And then, you create your own answers. Sometimes you need it. I'm thrilled in meetings like this if we don't come up with any answers, but we've come up with a bunch more questions that'll help us go in the direction we need to go. And
I'm going to
complete
transition
there, and
over to my my phone.
I see something brewing there, Jamin.
Yeah, I got a bunch of thoughts brewing here. One is that we, continue to work on kind of the chunking out of, even, our own community here. Like, we spend the first several hours in the block party on a segment called Groping for Utopia. And that's appropriate for talking about utopia. What do we want to achieve? I've gotten some feedback that maybe we shouldn't use that word because utopia means no place, and that therefore if we do that, it'll take us to no place. But that's a detail. My main point is, let's figure out what we want to do with this 2-hour slot specifically, be specific about that. And what stuff we want to push into other slots, whether Groping for Utopia or Afterglow or etc. Other meetings that we can have in this space. So that's one thought. Another thought is, when I brought up the Castro district, Brett mentioned Soho, right? So let's call ourselves Castro, right? There's a Soho out there. There's a neighborhood in Miami where people like us get together. There's a neighborhood in Dallas where people like us get together. Though I hear that one's pretty quiet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so how do we connect with these other communities? And then, you know, the chunking out I mentioned a couple of minutes ago within this community. That's one dimension of chunking out, and then finding other communities is another dimension of kind of filling in the map of the heavens of these kinds of communities and conversations and their respective cultures and areas of focus, etc. And I think one way that we can do that is by, you know, identifying these other communities, like, for example, Rebel Wisdom comes to mind, and inviting the folks from there to come here so that we can interview them and say, hey, it looks like we're, you know, there's a lot of overlap between what we're doing. We just love to pick your brains and find out what you guys have been doing, what's working, what's not working, what your goals are, etc., and have that kind of sharing, so we can cross-pollinate. And again, just continuing to show up on this podcast and continuing to do what we do. And then, you know, again, we had a great Twitter space yesterday. Complement that with Twitter spaces. I just want more of this in my life. My name is Harvey Milk, and I'm here to recruit you. To recruit you to what? Well, that's what we're figuring out. And so please join us. Passing the feather.
Well, we're looking at, we're already 6 after the hour. Do you want to go a little longer here, or because we have no exact set time, but we
Yeah,
could go to the main, back to the main room.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from Daniel, his final thoughts. I think Gavin had to take off, so he's probably not here any longer, but yeah, let's complete the wrap up and then we can go back to the main room. That'd be my suggestion.
Good.
And if anyone has more final thoughts, you know, even if you've already spoken, please jump in, pass in the feather.
I'm complete for now.
I would say leave it at that and the recording, Marco. We'll go to the next room.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind hearing from Mr. Azarian there one last time before we transition. Looks might not be available just now. Okay, our live stream is down.
We're still recording. I don't know about the live stream.
Yeah, I took that we were concluding the podcast segment and had shut off the recording and stream on my end.
All right. Well, I'll go ahead and pause recording here anyway. Shall we head back? Oh, there's Daniel. Go ahead, Daniel.
I just had to step away, so I'm not back. Are we gonna go back to the afterglow, or what happened?
Yeah, that's the plan, and we were just kind of giving everyone an opportunity to give their final wrap-up thoughts. So if you have any final thoughts, go for it, and then we can head to the afterglow from there.
I'm good. I think the last thing I showed took up plenty of airtime, so I will go hang out for a few minutes in the afterglow, and then since it's late here, I'll have to get out pretty early. But yeah, thanks everybody.
All right. Thank you, Daniel. All right. Pausing recording, and I'll see you all in the main room. Just click the button, leave room in the lower right or upper right or wherever you are, and we'll see you in the main room. And thanks everyone for listening.